Zhang Ailing's Little Reunion Text Chapter 2. This is Babi. You can't come down yet. Wu Jin was looking at her watch. Die, die, die. The two Penning girls were still chanting in a low voice. It doesn't matter to you. Your brother will give you extra lessons, one of them said. Where? He's taking the exam himself. How can he have time? He called yesterday and asked. How is it? Rose said with a smile, a pair of thrush eyes fixed on her snow-white round face. Julie ate milk cereal, scrambled eggs, bread, and coffee, but she still felt empty, with nothing to rely on. And no one to rely on. Man is completely hollowed out, a bottomless pit that cannot be filled. Several senior Malayan overseas students sat around one end of the long table. All overseas Chinese girls are studying medicine, otherwise it would be wrong for girls to travel alone. Everyone knows that Victoria University is only good at medicine. As usual, medical school lasts for 6 years, but here it is 7 years, and it is easy to repeat the grade. The senior students are all women over 30 years old. Threw his sexual organ in an alcohol can on the asphalt road at the entrance of the anatomy hospital. Several people burst into laughter. The inner hand held a wine bottle. Already drinking alone with a bottle of wine at 10 o'clock in the morning? Of course they all drink. I heard that the chairman of the English department and his wife are both alcoholics. And Juicy took the book and gave it to her. Would you like to borrow it to read? You can come and get it at any time, even if I'm not here. And crept in, quietly taking out the large stack of books on the desk. Take out a copy and change it after reading it. He only chatted for a few words with Sally, and the two of them left immediately. Sally often said that Aunt Juicy was a nice person, and felt sorry for him. He said angrily, in fact, he should have been the head of the department long ago. He has not even become a professor, and he is still a lecturer. He was born in Cambridge, and it seems that masculinity and left-leaning are the most common in Cambridge. Julie sometimes wonders if this kind of thing is taboo. Many lonely old bachelors in Britain are not gay. In addition, he often wears a red tie, but it is old brick red, not bright red. If it were a communist party, you would not be able to hear what he said on the podium. Although he liked to ask about 1848, the date when many small revolutions began in Europe. Some people say that Mike, the director of liberal arts, is very powerful. Julie had taken his class. The more he was afraid of seeing her, he sat next to her. When he turned around and saw Julie, he said, Julie, tell me something quickly. Anything is fine. Julie smiled bitterly and said, I don't know anything this time either. Sally threw her head and looked away. You still say that. You don't have to worry. But he suddenly swallowed, paused, and shouted to Daphne, die, die. Today is really a life-threatening situation. Again the chair bounced. Sally is a clear accountant who doesn't know, and Juicy asked a question that day and several people couldn't answer it. He seemed to have given up and shouted impatiently, Miss Chang. Julie also smiled and shook her head at him. He was stunned for a moment, then called someone else, and you could hear a little anger in his voice. There was silence in the class for a moment. Everyone is most sensitive to these things. This year she did get a free scholarship as predicted in his letter, but it won't be available in the second half of the year. What should Aunt Juicy think? He thought she couldn't stand it. How embarrassed she was. The reason why I can't enter this semester is mainly because it is modern history. The more modern times we get, the less storytelling it is and the closer it is to newspapers. Not only were the current affairs in the newspapers gray and boring, but she also didn't quite believe them, feeling that there was something behind them. Bibi also said that the things around her are more important than the world's major events, because the distance and the size of the drawing are proportional. The vase of flowers on the windowsill is larger than the mass seen outside the window. Bibi finally came down. She didn't even have time to sit down, so she stood and made a scrambled egg sandwich to take in the car to eat. The wheel is smoothly pushed towards the operating room, where the operation is about to begin. The dining table faces the sea and the sky, which are the same color as duck egg. In the sky, there are only the silhouettes of humps of a row of small islands, and a row of turtles in twos and threes, some big and some small. Several planes were flying very low, to dark and to big, and the duck eggshell sky was a bit unbearable. Suddenly there were two heavy shouts. "Drill again," said a senior overseas Chinese student. Julie saw a speeding car explode on the horizon. She didn't know whether it was a water tower or an oil storage barrel that exploded, affecting passing cars. After just one glance, he disappeared, and his heart was already filled with a guilty feeling. Juicy has an old car, but instead of riding in it, he always rides a bicycle. Sometimes he sees her smiling and waving. A few more loud bangs came from the sea, quite soft. Everyone looked outside. Anne Henry came in from behind at some point. She lowered her head and clasped her hands. She rolled her big black eyes under her thick eyelashes and looked at everyone, her big face pressed against her white collar and squeezed out. "Double chin. The university called me and said that the Japanese are attacking Hong Kong," she said quietly, her voice low. There was an uproar. "That was a bomb just now. I said I didn't hear about the drill today." "Hey, Mama, where did it explode? Why didn't the air raid siren go off?" "Oops. My family is spending the weekend in Singyi Island. I don't know if I'm back," Siley said. "I'll make a call. I can't get through. They're all on the phone." "Aunt Luke didn't get through when she called the monastery," said Aunt Henry. "Oh, Mommy, did you attack from Kowloon?" "Mommy, what else did you say?" There were 7 mouths open, but Julie remained silent, sitting there motionless, as cold as a stone. Waves of joy surged up and washed over the rock. He also didn't dare to move for fear of showing his joyful expression. Jeannie snorted and sneered. The snake knows the hole that the snake drilled into. When Grandma came in just now and said she already knew it, she stood up and left. Everyone was startled after hearing this, and when they saw that Bai was gone, all the girls in Hong Kong went up and called home. Most of the rest went out to watch. Aluminum sheet, and Henry rushed out and shouted, "Go in, go in. It's dangerous." No one paid attention, so she had to shout at the 2 Penang girls. They graduated from a girls' school run by a monastery in their hometown. They were used to obeying, so they immediately wandered in with a smile. "King of flowers," cried Aunt Henry to the gardener, "lift the row door. You are safest here, on the basement floor." Then he went upstairs to inquire about the news. After entering the canteen, most people came in one after another. Sally was seen sitting on the side crying, and she couldn't get through on the phone. An upperclassman was trying to persuade her not to worry. All the local girls were packing their things upstairs, waiting for the family car to pick them up. Ruby was the first to call home and ask a car to pick her up, and she had already picked him up. Cal said a bomb fell on Deepwater Bay. Sister Therese hurried in to report. She admired the thin, old gardener. He, his wife, and their child lived in a small cement room at the back door. "Mommy, there's no more butter," Bobby complained in a tired voice. "Weeping Mammy, come and touch it. The coffee is cold. Mammy, please bring me a different pot." With only the translucent glass at the top of the row of doors, the cafeteria looks like a gloomy Dutch religious painting. The large square pillar with 2 people hugging each other is painted in creamy yellow. The floor is paved with bright red square bricks. The long table in the style of a monk is full of people, eating the Last Supper. "Jeannie has seen the most wars," Wu Jui said with a smile, then turned to Julie and said, "You can't see anything in a Shanghai concession." "Oh, Jeannie was silent for a while, and then said in a low voice, "It's not just an escape, it's hard, and there's nothing to eat." Hot coffee has arrived. After a moment of silence, discussions began again on the table. Bibi just immersed herself in eating and drinking, with a look of sadness on her face. After eating, he said to Julie, "I'm going up to sleep. Are you going up?" On the stairs, Julie said, "I am very happy." "That's bad," Bibi said. I know you think you're not bad just because you know it's bad." Bibi thinks that hypocrites are better. At least they are willing to pretend, which is still an improvement. She likes to argue, but Julie has never been too lazy to argue with her. They lived into small rooms at the end of the corridor, with opposite doors and bright red brick floors. Julie followed her into her room. "I'm exhausted." She fell onto the bed and thumped her waist with her backhand. Her curves were too deep and steep, and her back was sore when she lay on her back because she was suspended in the air. "Call me after lunch." Julie sat down on the chair. There are long windows on both sides, and the small room is like a glass bubble, hanging high above the sea. Of course, the basement is safe, but the atmosphere in the cafeteria is really suffocating. The glass bubble hangs over the harbor, waiting for shrapnel from the plane to burst it. If you don't like modern history will knock on your door. Bibi tugged at the sleeping bag under her body. The velvet-lined sleeping bag was extremely stuffy and gave off a hint of Indian smell. "What are you reading?" "Historical notes." Bibi chuckled, laughing at her for trying to make up for it. She felt that her luck was too good, but she was afraid that it would not last long if classes were to resume soon. She would still have to take the exam. The siren suddenly sounded at noon, and the air raid warning was lifted with hindsight. In the afternoon, Bibi answered the phone, came back upstairs, and smiled quietly. "A boy came to watch a movie with me. The cinema is still open." "What movie?" "I don't know. No matter what it is, it's worth a trip." "Hey, let's see what the city looks like. Do you want to go?" She suddenly seemed to have trouble with her conscience. Julie smiled quickly and said, No, I don't want to go." She never mentioned a surname. Always a boy. One time, she suddenly told Julie with a half smile and half annoyance, "Some boys go out to find prostitutes after going out with their girlfriends. Have you ever heard of such a thing?" Julie would rather die than make a fuss. She just smiled. "That's possible too. Another day," she said. "Malaysian boys are the worst. They're prostitutes. Indian boys are the worst. No matter how good they are with their girlfriends, they still go home and get married," she said. Another time she came over angrily and said, "Wuzhen said there is no such thing as love, but you just have to get used to a man, Mr. Lee, who sounds arrogant and doesn't love her." "Do you think so?" Bibi said. Julie smiled and said, "Yes. I don't know," she said loudly, as if to show irresponsibility, washed her hands and turned around to clean the desk in annoyance. On summer nights, boys would go for a walk in the mountains in groups, and they would stop not far from their dormitory. They would line up in long rows holding each other's arms, walking back and forth on the road, singing pop songs. Sometimes I would also call the names of the girls in their dormitory, and there would be a burst of chaotic laughter. Most of the time, she is called Siley. Most of them are local girls from these English schools. Sometimes she is also called Bibi. It's probably the influence of the Malay singing of courtship, but when it's collective, it becomes a joke. Otherwise, I'd be embarrassed. "Those boys are singing again," sneered someone from upstairs. Although there is no musical accompaniment and no harmony, it is still pleasant to listen to from a distance at night. Julie felt sad after hearing this. Went to buy fresh French bread and went to two nuns. They have always been like patrolmen. They always go out in pairs to protect and monitor each other. "Who are you going to watch a movie with?" "Is it Chen?" Wu Zhuan asked. "It's Chen, right? Hi, I'm sending you up the mountain in the dark." I clapped my hands and smiled, and said it again in Mandarin, implying that I touched more than just the dark. Not many people here understand Mandarin. Bibi doesn't care whether he understands a little bit or not, and just ignores it and just immerses himself in eating. Aunt Theory's kept it for her. You know. There is a strange feeling. It's dark, and the box office is lit with blue lights, she whispered to Julie, and talked in a low voice, using the dim light inside the door to avoid suspicion. Wuzhen and Mr. Lee stood side by side in the corridor outside the cafeteria, leaning against the cement wall, folding their arms, and remaining silent. Mr. Lee is also an overseas Chinese from Malaya. He is short, white, with swollen eyes, and looks like a baby. His family is rich and owns a rubber plantation. People come and go, and Graceful smiles bitterly at them. "Why don't you come and sit in the living room? Come up, the old housemistress, Aunt Mark, leaned out half her body on the small staircase and shouted. "And where is Johnny?" Wu Jui only smiled in return, her pointed face showing muscles and bones, and her cheeks were red. Bibi was singing Gilbert and Servants opera in a low voice again. The witch got on her broom and flew all over the sky, just like they wanted to be with someone whose boat capsized and drifted to a desert island. When the Japanese soldiers come, isn't this the same as a sheep tied to a tree as tiger bait? Julie thought to herself. And that they could receive food rations? He asked Jianni. Are you going to go together? Jianni paused for a moment, raised her eyebrows, and said with a smile, Okay, let's go together. After dinner, Julie went to call her, but no one answered. She must have taken a step first. Julie didn't expect that she hated her so much. Hundreds of students walked to register, but she didn't recognize any of them, and she didn't pay attention to where Jianni was. When there was a bombing, it was across from Happy Valley Cemetery. This is the tone of the overseas Chinese, and there is also a sinister atmosphere in the comedy. When facing death, on the way home, a boy brought a sack of black bread. It was issued by the Air Defense Headquarters, one for each person. Julie has never tasted such delicious bread. I almost got killed. A bomb fell across the street. She heard her own voice telling someone in her head, Tell who? Is it still Mother Han? Judy has always been calm and doesn't take things seriously. Ruikyu didn't even think of her, but Bee will always be happy anyway, even if she dies. She was almost killed, and there was no one to tell her if she had lost something. It was already dark when we got back, and Henry nodded to her with a secretive look, as if she had a piece of candy for her. When she came closer, she said, Mr. Wei took Jianni. We all if you want to go back to the monastery. The dormitory here is about to close. You can go to the Methodist women's dormitory and they will take you in. It's not far from the university hall. If you go, just find Miss Donaldson. The Methodist Association runs a female staff dormitory. Julie felt that the monastery was a little unreasonable in pushing her towards strangers at this time. Maybe because she was afraid that she would ask why she didn't go to the first aid station. Of course it must be Rousy's brother who didn't let her go and send her here. They rarely met each other when they went to the bathroom. They all kept their heads down and hurriedly walked towards her. Then, at a fleeting glance, in the semi-darkness, they seemed to be all Cantonese women with crooked faces. After finishing the small half-tube of dry food that Julie brought, she relied on boiled water, but she was careful not to drink all the bottle, otherwise the owner would have to use it himself, and he might stop supplying it when he got angry. She began to understand why everyone was so sneaky, and they were not acquaintances. They were all afraid that others would ask for help if they ran out of food. After they got to know each other, they would be too embarrassed to share their points with others, especially since this is a Christian place. I can't refuse. Miss Zhang must have warned Rusy, so Rusy avoided her. She also went down to inquire. Rose laughed horrifiedly and said, The shell fragments cut off a corner of the roof, and they say it's dangerous upstairs. Julie followed them and sat on the stairs. The steps were covered with printed oilcloth. Someone shouted, Rose, your brother is here. Dr. Lin is here. The graduating class of medical students all respectfully addressed themselves as doctors in advance. Hey, brother, how can you come here at this time? We have just been hit by shrapnel. It's dangerous here. I'm here to pick you up. Come with me. Seeing that Julie was a classmate in her former dormitory, she asked, Would your friend want to go with us? Julie responded hurriedly and stood up, seeing that Rusy was about to speak, but hesitated. She couldn't tell her brother that she was far away from Julie. The three of them walked out, and Dr. Lin said, Go to Bonner Church. It's safe there. It was a boys' dormitory. Walking from the side street to the road around the mountain, you can see big red Christmas flowers blooming on the big trees at dusk. Suddenly, there was a sharp scream, and shrapnel came. Run, Dr. Lin said. The three of them ran hand in hand into a thin web of flash, spreading out in the sky to catch every shrapnel. Dr. Lin was in the middle, dragging them both away. Not being able to run fast made people tired, so they had to run as hard as they could. Jiu. It's getting denser. The road sloped uphill again. Although the slope was not big, the longer the road up the mountain, the more breathless it became. There was an iron plate pressed against my chest. "Can you type?" he asked first, sitting in front of the typewriter. "Won't." He frowned and continued to type a few reports with one hand. He gave her an exercise book and an alarm clock, and told her to write down the time every time the plane came. She didn't understand why. Could it be that Japanese planes were so stupid that they should come at this time next time and check in on time? "Did you write it down? The time?" he always asked. Julie smiled and said, I forgot." She quickly looked at Seklock in Destas Tunet. When reading novelistry, first Reathamund Wertster, in order Notterifum Timtim, the webmaster finally slees de wan to Gutauer, with a malicious Millaby, Shook nit the therder, poking Gampican Gonton out houses, there Midel Sababims, and Anner more Laguanman. "Yes," she said, smiling, but then thought that thoughts went. Wasn't familiar when 10, and didn't understand and, so didn't mention tea. Sizzling, bombing again. This loud noise was relatively far away, and the sound was a click. It was slow danily adder, sizzling, this in a was closer. Yesterday servubilatef, but o'day will shafiflikliklazi, sizzling, barren wooden theshiki, largyron baralefelit buried in the ground, sizzling, This time, as we got closer, Traflor shukondrant, Macanagun Sarazol, they can shoot town, san accidental affairt, ten serialist tarrant, no wonder schwasla wentry, go round and round, you go downstairs, imherto answerant, the station mastrid, shesuker headlids, Evan thufshu of less story, nos thu of master bellops, shahopet the thon wardle, and a fitrigen, fledger wold babrivi, son orla tertiaboriub, oril schwuldordala fairies, want to surrender, doyal want to panaristes, the cisna torwer, is it worth in gores dirip? Of course it isn't x, edis or within, nationalismus tensiontinimiimim, shis no trologus, nationalismus noffenton, when heavy already in terror feastiazia, people ilway share terdes, in the international. Your 3,000 to 5,000 years of culture foreign. Only if I can figla fifintintintint. But what's that boyfin toffee? You have it all of a kiz. Shahadan figure 80. Bust fortunate talisters. You also need to get a waffle tea. Shebelieve of it halafafula because Shakespeare finst. Not with tether said, I feel levy thrafor. It will be comacy. And the system I abaratary dit. That night, Inga sitting in Toria Dairy Julie from the stairs. Shechem you put handle. Wearing Grekla Feffentismum. With her hair sliffy Andy. Luconishium, calm and Geltha Swades. Chuwas asik Nedwanek. Jala thought a toffee tariff. All thought 'twas Solomon. 'Tis downtown Requentosins. But was it telso pa feritafsa? How's it going there? Bibi cajualamuter terrible. How terrible? It's just theme jubilet. With a bone epicador tafif. Rosa Shrito, hey, eyesore, asked. Have a distributorant? Julius Mildan said, note yet. That fact is that if a foreign 10, if he had nani wooldy injury, it wouldn't be brutarum. In fact, I can bring a portion D. No, is still have otheriana. You can go to the sturabosti, Biberius Shukishan. No, it's expensive and it's even more expensive if you don single quotes T speak Cantonese, don single quotes T do it. If you can really and Terry because I'd acknowledge shabai. Thenosize absolutely. BB sa shredpers, starving to death a listle, but buying kiata but you're really doing tea. The rarewarian liortas. Thestor France wefus tilid. With the mountain taint his tent. That a gregro seri quarisly. Bespacid b, a taglance. It felt that the bear durares, bullying and exless. What time is it? Do you want to go back? Stay here today. Do you have a blanket? No. I found some old magazines and used them to cover them. The Life magazine is big enough, but it's too smooth and falls to the ground easily. BB went to another room upstairs, and Julie heard talking and laughing there. After a while, she came back with two military blankets. Julie didn't ask who she got it from. I still don't know where Rose lives. No sheets, just sleeping on the mattress. I blew out the candles, took off my clothes, and went to bed. In the darkness, under the rough blanket, Julie's legs touched BB's thighs, which were cool and solid. She was used to her own long legs and was a little disgusted by BB's legs, which reminded her of the braised frog legs she ate in the north when she was a child. Maybe it's because of hunger. But since her mother warned her not to have sex with BB, there was always a shadow of doubt in her heart, so she felt relieved. Because she really likes BB's golden brown round face, and her Indian eyes are like black suns. She sometimes says, "Let me press your nose." "What are you doing?" BB said, but she also brought it up. Julie gently touched the tip of her nose. Her arms felt numb as if she was electrocuted, and she laughed. She would often poke Julie's calf with a finger and say in Mandarin, "Dead human flesh," because it was white and turned purple. She was probably disgusted too. She left early in the morning. Julie went to work. At noon, the station master's wife brought a meal, several exquisite dishes, and a bowl of ham and egg fried rice. Julie felt dizzy next to her. The boy guarding the 2 machine guns on the roof kept sending people down to inquire about the rations. The station master said that he had called many times to urge them and would tell them as soon as he had any information. There was still no news until get off work. The bathroom in the Methodist dormitory only has a gray cement floor standing shallow tub. In order to save water during the siege, Julie finally accumulated a basin of water to wash her socks. It was getting dark and she could hardly see anymore. "Julie," Rusi stood at the bathroom door. "Mr. Onjusi is dead. Beat him to death." Julie's initial reaction was that she suddenly became possessive. She thought that Rusi had just been here for half a year and was studying medicine. She knew what Mr. Onjusi was, but of course the facial expression was one of shock. And he just whispered what? The British teachers in the school were all reserve troops, but they were unexpectedly sent to the front line. Julie didn't ask where the news came from. It must be her brother. Rusi left quietly. Julie continued to wash her socks, and then started sobbing, but just like the tap, she was shocked and convulsed for a long time before bursting out with a few tears of pain. Only then do we know how death ends everything. Originally, I always thought that one day I could explain it to him, but in fact, what could be explained? But now there is a cool breeze, and a heavy stone door slowly closes. She least believed in God, but under the continuous bombing, maybe it was the Western saying, "There are no atheists in the trenches." At this time, she suddenly raised her head and said to the upstairs in her heart, "You treat me so well. In fact, just stop the exams. There is no need to kill the teachers." The maid came early the next morning to ask for Miss Donaldson's invitation. When I went downstairs, I saw everyone in the dormitory gathered in the dining room, wishing each other a Merry Christmas. It turns out that today is Christmas, and it is still the first day of the year, and I even forgot about the day. There was a small window with iron bars near the ceiling, letting in sunlight and shining on the dark green linoleum on the dining table. Miss Donaldson treated her to breakfast, condensed milk and black tea, and various cookies and candies. Julie left a few biscuits in her hands and took them out. On her way to work, she met a classmate who told her that Hong Kong had surrendered. She still couldn't believe it. She went to the air raid station and saw no one there. An overseas Chinese doctor who taught medicine came forward to preside. The homeless students from other places moved into a boys' dormitory and had a big pot of food to eat. On the first day after moving in, Babi was still in Wan Chai and someone came to see Julie. She went downstairs, and the tables and chairs in the vast cafeteria were stacked on one side. Unexpectedly, her classmate Yen Mingsheng came up to her with a smile. Neatly dressed in a suit, like a little secretary in the peaceful era. He once competed with her, but now classes have been suspended and everyone has gone their separate ways. So he came to say goodbye to show that he had no hard feelings. She is really a little afraid of people seeing her, so don't think he is her boyfriend. Bibi once didn't know what someone said about her. Anyway, she was classified as Yen Mingsheng, and she was very angry. Like British and American universities, the gentlemancy is popular here, and those who work too hard are not encouraged. After exchanging greetings, Julie smiled and said, "Are you ready to leave here?" She wanted to go back to Shanghai, and thought that others were also planning to go back to their hometowns. She saw an ambiguous look on his face and didn't understand why. She didn't know at that time that within a day or two after the surrender, Saley and his group had crossed the mountain to Chongqing. There are many people leaving. Some people also asked Bibi to go together and said they would take Julie with them. Bibi told her that she found it a bit insulting and clearly treated her like a straw rope on a ham. The bombing in Chongqing is severe. Won't you come back to Shanghai with me? It's better if your home is there, she said to Bibi. Shanghai's people always feel that Shanghai is better despite the same situation. Bibi is everything. Chen, who often asked her out, did not leave and got a piece of butter for her. She gave it to Julie to eat with rice, which was probably the way to eat Persian food. Another bottle of chicken juice and soy sauce was given. Chen had the same boyish appearance as her, but was not fair, had a slender figure, and was tall enough. Julie asked her once, and she said he was childish and thought he liked me. She might prefer another guy named Kwang, who is also an overseas Chinese and likes music. Sometimes he asks her out, and when she gets worried, she goes out to walk alone all night. This time I left with Saley and the others. It was most likely him who went with Joby Bibi. Later, he and Saley got married in the mainland. Julie didn't find a place to sit down, so she stood and chatted with Yin Mingsheng. He didn't mention Anjusi's death in battle, nor did he mention anything about the war. When she went to Happy Valley to register that day, she didn't seem to see any of her classmates. These overseas students who came all the way to study liberal arts knew that the liberal arts at Victoria University were not good. But they were just here to get a diploma, so they were less willing to take the risk of becoming orators. The registration office lit a fire outside. Mingsheng said suddenly, "Burning documents. Why?" He muttered, "Destroy the documents. The Japanese soldiers haven't arrived yet." "Oh, hey," she stood by the glass door with her arms folded, a little dazed, and looked out the door, as if she thought she could see the light of the fire. Mingsheng smiled and said, "Let's go down and take a look. It's such a big fire. Many people are going to see it." Julie smiled and said she couldn't go. Mingsheng added, "The fire is so big. Don't you want to go and take a look? I'll go with you." "You go ahead. I won't go." All the documents were burned, including the students' records and grades, he said, smiling like a cat. Only then did Julie know his purpose. There is no report card here. Just like a report card, it is posted on the bulletin board covered by glass, and everyone crowds round to look at it. She was never embarrassed to look twice, but once she saw it, it was like a mark that she would never forget, and she immediately squeezed out of the crowd. Burning your scores is like a lifetime of fame and fortune being wasted. He repeatedly wanted to accompany her to see it. She finally sent him away with a smile and went back upstairs. She remembered the time when she was a child and found that someone had made a horizontal mark with a pencil on one of her watercolor paintings. The force penetrated the back of the paper and she knew it was her brother. After Bibi came back, she heard news from various rescue stations, one after another. Only one station had a female overseas Chinese student. She was white-faced, short, and had childlike hair. She looked like a Japanese schoolgirl, but she had disguised herself as a boy and had her hair cut short. Wearing a men's shirt and long hakama, sweeping the yard with a broom, a Japanese soldier came forward. She saw the opportunity and fled into the house. She ran upstairs and stood at the window pretending to jump, but he let it go. It is actually a story in Saxon Heroes. I don't know if it's because Hong Kong is an international tourist destination, but military discipline was already very good when we entered the mid-levels area. In the dormitory auditorium, there were often Japanese soldiers on the stage playing the piano with one hand. Once, two people came to Bibi Julie's room and sat on the bed, talking to each other. After sitting for a while, they left. One day Julie heard that there was a bath in a professor's residence. Of course the people had gone to the concentration camps. She didn't know why there was hot water in the faucet. She hurriedly brought towels and soap. The bathroom door was closed, and someone was filling the bath water. She didn't dare to go far, fearing that someone else would come and occupy her seat. She went to the small study room halfway up the stairs to take a look. The white ground was covered with messy papers, which had been looted by the poor woodpickers in the mountainous area. She and Bibi used to sit on the side of the road on the weekends chatting on the iron railing, with their feet hanging in the air on the top of the tree. On the tree there were small white flowers like pearl orchids, and sometimes a burst of fragrance floated up. Occasionally there were white mist on the hillside below. A hat came out, with a 3-inch long pleated blue cloth curtain hanging under the brim. It was a woman gathering firewood. It was them. This was her English professor's house. She looked at his bookshelf, pulled out a copy of Salome illustrated by Beardsley, and tore out all the illustrations, determined to take it back to Shanghai to preserve a sliver of Western civilization. After waiting for a long time, the bathroom door is locked, and there is no answer when I knock on the door. I don't know if I am washing clothes or taking a comfortable soak and falling asleep. After waiting, she needed to go to the bathroom. I had to go elsewhere, fearing that someone would snatch the space in the bathroom, and I would have to close the door and squat down while waiting in vain. A hollow ball of paper and the sound of rustling rain on the layers of paper. She remembered that time her house was robbed by a thief, and she pooped before going there. It was said that it was like this as usual, for good luck. Did he act like a thief? Miss Xiangba and Mr. Bai came to see her and brought her a pack of yuba. She entrusted them to inquire about the ferry tickets. Miss Xiangba nodded and said, "We have to leave too." The phone was not working, so she went to ask after a while and walked away. They no longer live in hotels and rent a house to live together. Dr. Lee, who was in charge of student relief, often accompanied Japanese officials on inspections. Dr. Lee, a short man named Ma Qiao, moved to a room in the dormitory of Zhongqian without any family members. A group of students in charge were all his fellow students, and among them there was a tall, sexy girl with a voluptuous face who seems to be Mrs. Yazai. Everyone queued up every day to get a plate of canned beef and rice mixed with soybeans. The two boys who were handing out the food with big spoons became more and more cross-eyed, as if they were eating theirs. And this is also true. At night I often heard the sound of trucks at the door, coming to pick up cans of rice sold on the black market, allocated from the British government stock. Wuzhen and Mr. Lee are getting married, Bibi said. Just register, we will allocate another room in the dormitory for them to live in. Julie knew that she felt it was not worth it for Wazin. Besides, the rubber plantations may be gone and Malaya has fallen. Rui Q had written from Singapore. Of course she didn't mention Lloydend. I don't know if she is still there or not. Julie and Bibi went to the bank. The bank was a newly built white building. As soon as they entered the door, the light was dim and there were piles of shit on the tiled floor, which were pulled by Japanese soldiers. Behind the brass fence, all the staff were out, and there were people sitting at each desk. The mixed-race man sitting nearest frowned because the air was so smelly. The sleeves of his long-sleeve shirt were tied with a wide tight belt to raise the cuffs, for ease of work. It was still popular in the West in the early 20th century. When Julie saw him, it felt like a lifetime ago. She had 13 yuan left in her deposit, so she withdrew all of it. Bibi promised to lend her money to buy a boat ticket when there was a boat. Leave 2 yuan, otherwise your bank book will be gone, Bibi said. Why do you need a bank book? Bibi doesn't have her sense of the end of the world. There was a corpse lying on the sidewalk. Someone had tied up his arms and legs for him. His clothes, shoes and socks were all clean. If he died from a stray bullet, he is still there these days. Bibi hurriedly said, "Don't look." She looked away. When I went to town, I couldn't help but stop by to buy some cloth. She newly discovered Cantonese homespun cloth, with the most dazzling rose-red ground, green leaves and pink flowers, and dense dots to render the shadows. This pattern does not seem to be found anywhere else in China except Japanese clothing materials that sometimes have a three-dimensional image. Her doubts were old and disappeared. In the back streets of Central, the sloping stone pavement climbs higher and higher. After the war, there were so many cloth stalls, and the crowds were so crowded. The pink and green peach trees reflected the blue sky above, like a market on a hillside. Bibi helped her choose and negotiate prices, and the vendors kept calling her auntie. Bibi didn't believe that the color wouldn't fade, so she soaked some saliva and rubbed it on the cloth for a while. Julie felt as if she had been pricked by a needle, but the vendor remained silent. Gianni and Mr. Wei were suddenly seen in the crowd, and everyone greeted them. Mr. Wei did not speak and stood back. Gianni had a big belly, and she was not wearing a coat in the warm weather. She stretched out her two blue cloth cheongsam so far that her belly looked big and long, like the belly of an insect. Julie tried her best to keep her eyes on her face and not look down, but her bright blue cheongsam was too big. Even if she didn't look at it, the blue color soaked into her eyes and spread upwards. Maybe it was her eyes, distracted, speaking a little absent-mindedly. "I thought you must have left," Julie said. Seeing Gianni smile, a mysterious shadow flashed across her face. She still didn't understand why, but she didn't expect that leave was now synonymous with going to Chongqing, and it would be dangerous to do so in a crowded place. And of course they are going to Chongqing. He has a wife in his hometown, and they will not go together. Even if I want to go, I can't buy a train or ferry ticket, so I won't leave already. "Of course I want to leave," Gianni finally said in a long voice, "but it's troublesome. The old lady and the old lady are old, so they have to take care of themselves." Then he switched to English and asked Babi about their current residence, and said goodbye after talking for a few words. As soon as they left, Babi puffed up her cheeks as if she was holding a mouthful of water. She held back a smile and looked at Julie, neither of them saying a word.
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.